Hey everyone out there on Facebook. Welcome. It is I, Dr. Jason Pape, chiropractor extraordinaire, bringing you education, information, motivation, inspiration on the regular. Tonight we're doing it on a Tuesday. We're changing some things up because Mondays lately, man, with new patients and everything, I get done so late. I don't know who's even around to watch. So anyway, how y'all doing? Y'all doing good? Let me just do that. There we go. All right. So welcome to my living room. Or dining room. That's where the kitchen dining room table is, in the dining room. So, hey there, everyone. If you've never seen me before, please feel free to drop on number one in the comments below. Let me know where you're watching from. Tell me it's your first time. If you have seen me before and have come back for more, please drop a number two in the comments below, if you will. So, tonight, folks, we're going to do a little topic I like to call Everybody Poops, because everybody poops. And poop's an important thing. It helps us understand a little bit when it comes to functional medicine and things like that, how people are doing. Because our immune system is so intricately tied to our gut, and our gut affects our brain, right? It's all about the brain. Well, tonight it's all about the brain, how it's affected by the gut. Um, so, a lot of times, us functional medicine doctors will use the gut to kind of give us an indicator how people are doing. It's not a perfect science, but it is definitely helpful. So we're going to pop a couple slides on here, folks. I don't know why it looks like it's in the middle of the slideshow from the picture there. And it is. I'm going to go over and giving you guys cutting it off here. For some reason it was stuck in the middle. All right. So let's talk about poop. Why your poop tells you more than you think. Exciting stuff. So before we go into that, again, as y'all pop on here, please put a private message and send me a message. Let me know you're watching. And if you'd like to share this out with anyone who might be interested, put it on your page, private message in a group, in a post, whatever it may be. And let's put a little bit of our information up there for you, shall we? So first things first, all our Linktree stuff just popped up in the corner there. So just scan that. You can follow us on all the social Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, and all the like. And I will put our captions in here where you have this is me, Dr. Jason Pape, chiropractor, doctor of chiropractic, chiropractor extraordinaire also. Can I do my ticker at the same time? That would be really cool. Can I do it all at once? And I did. And there's our ticker with all our socials as well. Cool. Now I feel very official. So let's talk about the poop. So let's talk about the gut first for a minute, because let's understand why that's important. So your intestinal tract is a big part of your gut. And when we talk about the gut, we're not just talking about your intestinal tract. We're actually talking about everything. It's one giant tube, really, from mouth to anus. I know it's a beautiful picture, but it really is one giant tube, if you will. So everything affecting the gut here affects the mouth, affects everything else. And that system should be functioning optimally. When it does, your immune system functions optimally. 80% of your immune system is in that gut. All right. So if this is off, that's going to be off too. And if that barrier is not great and becomes leaky, so does the brain, so do your lungs. Any semi-permeable barrier becomes more permeable. So let's talk about the gut and the intestinal tract for a minute. So, and why poop gives us an indicator of that, right? All right. So I always like to think of your gut kind of like an upper middle class neighborhood, right? Everyone's got a nice, well-manicured lawn and a white picket fence and neighbors that wave at each other and a nice, well-funded police force. Okay? If you got rid of the police, what might happen to your neighborhood? Well, crime would probably go up, right? The roving street gangs might come in. Now they're selling cocaine in the corner and there's graffiti everywhere. And eventually the people move out and the place goes to crap, right? We don't want that. Now imagine that we start dropping bombs on the place. Right? Now it looks like Afghanistan and no one's taking their kids there on vacation, right? So what does your gut look like, right? And when we talk about the good guys, the cops in your immune system, in your gut, it's probiotics. Those are the good bacteria, commensal bacteria that work with our bodies to help with immune function and digestion and everything else. What's up, Paul? Okay. So a lot of things wipe them out. antibiotics, vaccines, certain foods, as many stress, a lot of things like that will wipe out your good flora. And because our food sources are so clean and we really don't eat fermented foods anymore, we really don't get the good guys back in. The problem is when they're there to keep the bad guys out and are at bay, and when the good guys are kind of taken out, the bad guys kind of take over. And when that happens, that's when you see the crime, if you will, of that nice neighborhood we talked about. And when that happens, it's not functioning optimally. Your immune system will be a problem. Now, when we talk about dropping the bombs, we're talking about food. All right. And there's plenty of foods that are really detrimental to our gut and our body and our health. Some examples of that: gluten, dairy, soy, and corn. Those are the 4 big allergens we like to talk about. And there are plenty of others that can be irritating based on food sensitivities, things like that. But those are the things that can make your neighborhood not great. And when that happens, it can affect transit time. It can affect a lot of things. So let's go back to our poop thing here for a minute. First of all, if you understand my neighborhood analogy, please drop a 3 in the comments below. Let me know you guys are following along and it makes some sense to you and why we're going there. So as you do that, I'm going to pull up some slides here. Bum, 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 bum. Slide number 2. So we talk about poop. We use it as an indicator of gut health. It's not a perfect indicator, but it's a helpful piece. And again, we talk about what the shape, the color, consistency. And I'm not meaning you should pick it up and touch it to talk about consistency. All right. There is something called a Bristol scale, which we're going to talk about. And there's also, again, diet, hydration, gut bacteria. All those things will influence bowel and bowel movement. So let's go back to me. All right. I'm getting some 3s. Y'all are with me. Awesome. So I want to talk a little bit more about the gut itself. So there are, in our colon, the colonocytes they have these things called gap junctions. So the cells can open and close like this, the spaces between them, that is, to let digestive food particles get into the body. It's not the only way they get into the body, but that's one big way. Okay. Now, when the good guys are around, the good probiotics, the good bacteria, they actually kind of man the gates a little bit, right? They also help with our breakdown of food and how we break down the food into the smallest components. And so what happens when they're not there and or the bad guys are there, the gap junction, especially with the bad foods, they can blow that place up. And now the gap junction is kind of sitting open. It's like the gates to the castle are wide open and no one's manning the guard. And sometimes the bad guys take over and it's almost like they make you pay a toll. So when that happens, undigested food particles or things we don't want into the body can leach into the system through those open gap junctions into the body because we're not moderating that junction as much. I'm simplifying everything here, but does that make sense? And when that happens, those undigested food particles can get in your system. Particles can get into your system, and your body will react to them. So again, when you have a piece of egg, let's say, it starts off egg, you chew it up, and there's a little bit of digestion here. The stomach starts breaking it down more, and then it gets released into your duodenum, and then the digestive enzymes come from the pancreas. The bile gets released from the liver and the gallbladder. So it's breaking down our food, emulsifying our fats, things like that. And as it works its way down, it gets broken down by the other bacteria, things like that. All right, does that make sense? Now, and over time, those things get broken down and absorbed. Now, let's say we're not breaking those things down as small as we should. So proteins are long strings of amino acids. And as you break the food down, they get broken, smaller and smaller. Those little peptides get smaller and smaller. So what happens if we don't break them down optimally? Because we're not making enough digestive enzymes, or the good guys aren't around, whatever. Well, sorry, my shoulder's a little off. Those undigested food particles, those smaller, tiny fragments that are not fully broken down, can enter the body because we don't have anyone manning the gates. And then the body sees that and says, hey, there's an egg there. Now, it's not like a piece of eggs literally floating around your blood, but the protein structure is big enough still that the body recognizes it as a foreign entity, and it may attack it. And when that happens, you start getting what's called food intolerances. Our immune system starts to react to these things in the body. And then when you start eating these foods again, you have reactivity to it. And it could be bloating. It could be something more inflammation, pain. It could be brain fog. It could be behavior. It could be so many other things it could affect. All right. Allergies, you name it. All right. And we don't want that. And when those bad guys are hanging out, they release something called lipopolysaccharides. Lipopolysaccharides is inflammatory toxins they let go into the system, and that causes inflammation in the body. And when those gap junctions are open up, we call this leaky gut, by the way. I don't know if I said that before. When that happens, when that becomes leaky, other semi-permeable membranes in the body become leaky. What are some places like that? Well, your lung, and more importantly, your brain. All right, so leaky gut here could affect asthmas. Leaky gut can cause brain stuff. And now we're releasing under these inflammatory molecules like LPS into the system. Inflammation here, inflammation body, inflammation brain. All right. See how it all ties together? This gut brain connection. This is just part of it. All right. That's why there's certain probiotics that you can take that actually can really affect brain function because of that connection. All right. So y'all picking up what I'm putting down? Drop a 4 in the comments below if you're getting this. Now, let's go back to poop because that's what we're talking about tonight, right? So if you're eating the right types of foods, all right, the healthy foods, you're getting some good fiber, you're getting your good fats, you're getting your proteins, your carbohydrates, whatever it may be, and you're optimally breaking them down, emulsifying, and having the good guys float around, you should have a couple of things. You should have a good normal transit time, and you should also have good, well-formed poop. We'll talk about what that means. Now, again, I've had plenty of people who don't have great guts that have normal bowel movement time and poop shape, but this is a helpful tool to understand what's going on. All right, getting some 4s. So let's go back to my picture here, my slides here. All right, so we talked about this. So I think the next slide is about a poop scale. So this is what's called a Bristol chart, a Bristol scale. A lot of times if you look up Bristol scale, you'll find pictures of Connecticut. It's easier just to call it a poop scale. So it rates your poop from 1 to 7. All right, 1 is basically rabbit poop. 2 is rabbit poop in a bar like a baby Ruth. 3s and 4s is what we're shooting for, right? Medium to dark brown, well-formed, snake-like, log-like, non-floating poop, okay? 5s are kind of looser. Sometimes they're floating. 6 is diarrhea. 7 is water. That's basically what we're getting to, okay? We want to stay in that 3 to 4 range. So there's another picture of another Bristol scale here. And there you go. So not really, you can see 3s and 4s are kind of where you want to be. Again, these are diagrams, not actual photos, thank God, because no one really wants to look at that otherwise. So one thing I always have my patients do is I have them do a food diary. So food diary is what you basically do. I have you tell you what you eat, when you're eating it, and tell me about your poop and symptoms. Symptoms are important too to see if there's certain foods that are triggering certain issues for you. So when we talk about like the poop, I tell my patients, listen, just give me a number, like how many bowel movements you might have, maybe what time you had them, as well as a number on that Bristol scale. I'm like, I don't need diagrams, photos, pictures, poems. I don't need anything like that. I just need a number. All right. And I tell them, unless there's something really crazy funky in there, let's not even talk about pictures. Okay. So that's making sense. If you guys pick up what I'm putting down, what a Bristol scale is and why we're doing this, put that poop emoji in the comments below. I'm going to play it up a little bit here. What's up, Joe? So when we do this, it's like we can say, okay, well, what does this mean, right? So usually optimal for people is that they're going at least once a day, a bowel movement. 2 or 3 times a day is really more, the most optimal, okay? If you're not going every day, that's not great. Even if you're every other day, not optimal, okay? That means things aren't moving through as quickly as we'd like them to. Again, they should be moving like a couple days. We shouldn't be going to the bathroom every few hours. You shouldn't be in there 6, 7 times a day either. So a lot of times if people don't go every day, you see them more on that side of 2 to 1s, right? So 1s are like you see, and 2s are more of the constipation. So what makes that happen? Well, a number of things can do that. Sometimes people, when they have a irritable bowel-based issue, they can have it where they have diarrhea or they have constipation. They can have both, okay? But that usually means something's not moving, that gut's not functioning optimally. So one thing that we can see with constipation sometimes is that people are not hydrating well enough. All right. When you're not getting enough water in, your body's looking for water. We need water. It's the elixir of life, right? So your body's going to pull that water from somewhere. One of the first places it pulls it from is from your gut, from your bowel. If that happens, what happens to your poop? Well, it gets harder, smaller, and a little denser, and it doesn't move as well. Transit time's lower. Okay, so water is very important. So that's why usually in my food diaries, I also tell people, how much water are you drinking a day? Give me a total. All right. And I always tell patients too, understand that if it's not water, it's not water. All right. So first off, understand that caffeine and alcohol are diuretics. Diuretics make you lose water. So I usually want people to have a minimum 6 to 8 glasses a day. I'd rather you closer to 100 ounces or, give or take everyone's thing. I mean, really, if you want to know optimal is 0.6 times your body weight in that many ounces per day is really what you should be taking in, approximately 0.55 to 0.66. I just do 0.6. It's an easier way to do it. All right. So that's what we should be doing at minimum. And just so you know, a glass is a cup, which is 8 ounces. Understand that caffeine and alcohol are diuretics. So I always tell patients for any kind of caffeinated or alcoholic beverage, have an extra glass of water. And like I said before, anything that's not water is not water. So anything you put into water, your body will sometimes use its own water to dilute. And the more concentrated it is, the worse it's going to be. So you might thinking, oh, I get 60, 80, 100 ounces in a day of fluids. That's not the same thing as water. Like juices, things like that, those are not great because they're usually concentrated. Your body's using more water, and actually sometimes you're more thirsty after that because your body's looking for more fluid. So again, 1s and 2s usually are some indicators of that. So the first thing I do when I see that, when you're not going every day, are we getting that 1s or 2s, is that are we hydrating optimally? Now again, stress, okay, can affect transit time, right? There's the sympathetic system, which is your fight or flight, and then you have your parasympathetic or rest and digest. So if we sit too much into fight or flight, well, guess where we're not going to be? Enough rest and digest. You might slow down transit times. All right, it may tank your stomach acid, it'll lower your digestive enzyme levels and not move things through optimally. Maybe bind you up even more. Too much or too little serotonin can cause either constipation or diarrhea too, by the way. Just an FYI. We're not going to go too far down the rabbit hole tonight. You guys picking this up? So if you are picking this up, give me a water emoji of some sort. Whether it's an ocean or a squirt or I don't know. Pick some kind of water emoji. Let me know you guys are following. I saw some poops. I was happy to see that. Those poops are not a healthy looking poop, by the way. And your poop should not have a face and smile at you. Something really wrong was going on there. So let's say as you guys are doing that, I'll go to the next slide. So it talks a little bit more on our next slide about what some of these things do. We talk about the role of gut microbiome and affecting stool formation. And again, when your good guys aren't there, a lot of times if we're not breaking our food down optimally too, our bad guys are in there breaking this stuff down. That can lead to more diarrhea or constipation too, right? So the bad guys can affect this as well, talking about our microbiome. Again, if you're having these kind of IBSD, IBSC type stuff, IBSD, diarrhea versus constipation. A lot of times we talk about overgrowth of bad bacteria, yeast, and things like that. And hey, thank you, Gene, for sharing this out. So you gave this is a great segue here. So if you think this is helpful, and you think anyone else might benefit from this, please feel free to share this out. If you came in late, don't know who I am Dr. Jason Pape, chiropractor extraordinaire. And I'm bringing you education, information, motivation, inspiration on the regular. It's education information night. Again, follow us on our Linktree stuff up front and all our socials as well as it's all linked down below. And that's who I am right there. So, and by the way, you know what? You're going to make me play with this a little bit. I'll go for it. And if you are in the local area or you are on Long Island somewhere and would love to come see us, here's our information. It's going to pop up right there is that not showing? Oh, it's on the bottom. Sorry. It's on the ticker with our phone number and our website and email. So feel free to send us some questions. Feel free if you want to come see us. Would love to make your acquaintance in the person. I'll go back to the chats here. All right. And thank you for sharing the inboxes, Lydia. Awesome. I got some good emojis there. Next, fiber intake. So again, certain foods will move through faster or slower, right? Carbohydrates break down quicker. They move through a little quicker. Proteins take a little bit more work to break down, go a little slower, and fats take the longest usually. So a lot of times, again, things that can help us if we're too constipated or or too diarrhea, sometimes fiber can be helpful. So good healthy fiber. So I'm not saying go take Metamucil. That's regular Metamucil with all that crap in it. But if you really want to get some stuff, psyllium husk, which is like if you get the organic Metamucil, it's like psyllium husk. Psyllium husk is a really nice natural fiber. Acacia fiber is not too bad either. Help mop up some mess too if you're having some die off. So things like that. Making sure they're not just having simple carbs. Complex carbs have fiber. Things like that can help slow down digestion, keep things moving a little bit. Now again, fiber can bind you up too. So if you're having too much diarrhea or not, or too much constipation, one can help the other. How it can make things move and vice versa. So always be mindful about too much or too little fiber intake. Some people move and they shift their lifestyle. So if you go from a traditional SAD diet and you try to do keto, because of the high fat, moderate protein, low carb, sometimes you might slow down. And then it's really important to kind of give the body the hydration, all the other kinds of things, and maybe take the digestive enzymes, help your body break food down. So a lot of times patients come into me if they're having problems with their digestion. There's two things I always start with. One is a probiotic, one is a digestive enzyme with bile. So probiotic will help to start recolonizing, start fighting off the bad guys, taking over, helping things move through better. And the other thing is digestive enzymes, because we need to break our food down, because most people may not make enough digestive enzymes and or bile. All right. A lot of times that has to do with their stomach acid being lower. We're not going to have a stomach acid conversation too much tonight. But when stomach acid is low, we don't release as much digestive enzymes. We don't release as much bile. And when that happens, we can't break our food down optimally, and we can't emulsify and absorb our fats. So if that happens, they break down further down in the gut. Okay. Undigested food particles might get in the body more easily. Fats might float around a little bit more, right? And now we're feeding these bad guys, and that can bloat you and cause some other things too. So these are all things to look out for. All right. And again, if you're not tolerating these things well, there could be some other issues that can show up in the stool too. Go back to my slides here. So hydration we talked about with the preventing constipation, and stress and lifestyle impact gut too. So we talked about before about stress that brings us out of rest and digest and into fight or flight. And these are not we're not just talking about stress like, oh my God, I'm so stressed today. That's part of it. But like, what's your activity level like, right? There's stressors throughout our day, good, bad, or otherwise. So one thing we talk about that can always help with digestion and moving things through is mindfulness, right? Are you a mindful eater? So what I mean by that is, like, when you eat your lunch, do you sit down and eat your food and relax? Or are you shoveling in at your desk while you're working? Are you standing up eating it over the counter? Are you driving somewhere eating your food? That is not being mindful. That is eating in a fight or flight state, trying to get rest and digest done. So do you think that's going to have good emptying times? Do you think that's going to have good transit times? Do you think it's going to help us break our food down and process it optimally? And if the answer is yes, you're not listening. The answer is no, folks, no. So understand that how we eat is important too. It starts right in that moment. Okay, so when you eat, sit down, be mindful of your eating. Okay, don't just shovel it in too. People sometimes mindlessly eat, even though they're sitting down and doing their thing, they're just shoveling it in. Take your time. Enjoy the break. Don't do it on the go. Don't do it standing up. Rest and digest. Take the time to do that. That will help optimal emptying and movement times. All right, you guys pick it up what I'm putting down? So what would be a good emoji for that? I don't know. Just drop a 5 in the comments below if you're with me on that. I couldn't think of a good emoji for that. If you can think of a great emoji, put it out there. All right, as we keep going forward here, and we talk about stress and lifestyle. Right? So lifestyle, again, too, is about what we eat and things like that. And as we go forward, let's go to the next slide. Some poop problems. So we'll talk about some common things you can evaluate from poop, some basic stuff. So a lot of times so we don't want black tarry stools. Black tarry stools usually means we have some kind of upper GI bleed. All right? So what's happening is if you have an upper small intestine or like stomach-based bleed, all right, there's some blood being digested and hemolyzed as it goes down. That's what makes the stools black, dark black, and tarry. So when we see that, we sometimes look for an upper GI bleed. So we don't want to see that. Frank blood in the urine is not necessarily in the urine. Frank blood in the urine is not good either, but frank blood in the stool is not good either. That usually means a lower intestinal or even hemorrhoidal-based irritation. So it could be, you could have a hemorrhoid internal or external. You could have some kind of colonic more issue, and inflammation, irritation of bad foods can cause that too. And that goes right along with the bottom of our list here with we talk about mucus in the stool. Sometimes that we see it with inflammation or infection. So if we're seeing mucousy stools or blood in the stool, especially when you're looking at little babies poop, usually there's some irritation. A lot of times we see that with dairy, with babies. Some other colors. So floating greasy stools, let's go back to that. So remember we talked about absorbing your fat. Well, if you're not absorbing your fat might wind up in your stool instead of being broken down and emulsified and absorbed. And now our stools float more. So we might have an issue where we're eating, we can't break the fat down, we're not emulsifying it, or we're just not absorbing our fat. And that's when we get floaty-ish stools. Or we're eating way too much fat. Now, again, I'm a keto guy, so I'm not a guy who's going to tell you fat's bad. I'm going to tell you that the wrong fats are bad. All right. And too much bad fats can cause some floaty stuff too. So that's another thing to think and look out for. These are things we look at when we evaluate. All right. When we talk about green stools, I mean, there's many things that can cause greener stools. Obviously, having way too many leafy greens could possibly do it. If things are moving a little quicker, they might be a little greener. I'm more so about bile. So if there's too much bile being dumped out, that can make you greener too. If you're eating foods that are heavily dyed, that are black dyed, like things that are artificially made dark or black, a lot of times, especially if it's an artificial color, it'll come out it'll come out dark green because it's the black dye turns into that in the body. So you don't want that either. It's another indicator of crappy food choices, like Lucky Charms or things like that. Then if we go into these pale or gray stools, a lot of times that's when we don't have enough bile. So if you have some kind of bile obstruction, or you don't make enough bile, or some kind of liver congestion, sometimes we'll see a lighter or grayer stool. That's when I worry about we're not getting enough bile production. Okay, and we need bile. All right, to help break ourselves down. So that's some helpful tools. So these are things we look for. These are a little bit more severe, some of these things. So it's not something to see every time, but these are things to think about when you look at your stool color and textures, if you will. So here's some helpful. Iron supplements turn stool black also. It shouldn't. It could, I guess. But I guess it can. I shouldn't say that. The ones I use don't. Things like ferrous sulfate might, because it's a little bit. And then you gotta be careful. Like, so certain things will bind you up. So traditional iron supplements without vitamin, you need to do two things. If you're taking a ferrous sulfate, that can constipate and bind you up, and you need to take vitamin C with it to absorb it. So be mindful, and that could definitely darken your stool a little bit. But if you get some things like I use, like a glycinated iron, something that's chelated, that's definitely a different absorption. You don't have to worry about the C or the constipation. And there are definitely some other things that you can use that can make it irritating. Sometimes when people start taking their probiotics, they may have a shift where they go from what's considered normal to like a loose or even a constipation. And that's because we're killing stuff off. So when you start going after and doing some gut protocols and you start killing the bad guys off, you can get some die off. Yeah, Ferrocal is what I use. That should not turn your stool black. Unless you're overdosing or you're not digesting it great. Paul, you should be breaking it down and absorbing that in a way that the body absorbs it with the glycine and then pulls the glycine off, as opposed to the iron just floating around on its own. So message me later if you have a question. So, what was I just saying? Oh, so as it kills the bad guys off, sometimes you get some what's called die off. And when that happens, you can feel a little bloated, you can have a little diarrhea, you can even get constipated. That's not a bad thing. It doesn't mean stop. It just means, hey, understand things are happening. And sometimes we use a binder to clean up that mess. That can be things like activated charcoal or bamboo-based or fulvic acid-based supplements. Now, be mindful if you ever use a binder, two problems. One, you ever take binder with food because it can, or supplements because it can bind to the stuff, not let you absorb it. And two, it can sometimes bind you up and constipate you a little bit. So be very mindful you're not someone who easily constipates when you start taking a binder. All right, again, these are all the pieces we look at. All right. How we manage our stress to help with bowel function. We talk about that. Probiotics, we talk about. Exercising can always help too. Help, like I said, help move things forward. Doesn't mean eat and then go jump on the treadmill, but exercise definitely helps things to move better because everything's moving more easily because everything's moving into the body and drinking lots of water and having those fiber-rich fruit. Good, healthy, vegetables. I'm not a big fan of the whole grains on a regular basis, by the way. My staff put this together for me, so. But yes, there are definitely some grains that are healthy and gluten-free that definitely can move things through better. All right. So what's our takeaways here? Poop's a vital health indicator. Yes, it can really help us understand what's going on in the body. A Bristol scale, we talk about to help assess. We can talk about how your health impacts the stool consistency and frequency. Lifestyle change can make a lot of differences. We go over a bunch of things over. And so this keeps handing us some questions if you want. So it's really important to kind of keep an eye on your gut health. And this is one way to help monitor it. Is it perfect? No, because there are definitely times when people have normal stool and going regularly, and their gut is still not healthy because of other factors. But it is a good indicator, especially when you can go from a non-normal level of frequency and or consistency and size and things like that to a normal area to see it where body's processing things better. And we also want to be careful too. We don't want to have too much of this gastrocolon reflex where every time you eat, you got to poop within 20 minutes. All right. That happens sometimes, but it shouldn't be all the time. All right. So, and again, going too much is not always a great thing either. So there's a lot of factors that go into what's going on with your stool. These are just some pieces, some high points that you can go back and take to the bathroom with you and have a good look and see what's going on. All right. And again, if you're seeing lots of things in your stool that look like they came out the way they went in, you have to wonder whether it was worth to eat them to begin with. Like if you're seeing, some people seeing mushrooms in there, they're seeing corn. I mean, this is a great conversation piece, but those things are not being absorbed, right? That's too funny, Paul. So good luck. But one thing I'll tell you too is certain things don't digest very well. But the other thing is understand that, are you chewing your food optimally? don't be just chewing and swallowing everything. Like if you're not breaking it down here, it's not going to break down there. So be mindful of how you chew. You break down your food, macerate it really well, get it broken down and really broken up here so it can digest further through. So also it's on an indicator of what you see things. If you see a lot of free floating pieces of food, we may not be optimally breaking, we're not chewing or breaking it down. So if y'all have any other questions, feel free to drop in the comments below. Again, I am Dr. Jason Pape, chiropractor extraordinaire, and I hope this has been helpful. Again, gave you some basics on gut health, how the gut and immune system work. Didn't go too deep into the leaky gut rabbit hole and other things there, but understand that as you continue to heal the gut, you may lower your food allergenic and or intolerance load because now the gut becomes more competent. The foods aren't leaking into the system all the time. The body can start to lower its immune response to those things, and a lot of times those foods go better. So some doctors will run food allergy panels right away off the top, and there's nothing wrong with that. I prefer to wait, if do this little bit of gut work rehab first, because a lot of times when you get these allergy panels back, there's so many foods on it that it's almost overwhelming of what you can't eat. So we take out the big ones, the big factors. All right. And if there's other foods, I usually have people do me a little bit of at least a 3-day food diet before they come in. And if there's certain food groups I see that seem maybe affecting them, I might, recommend they take that out too. And then what we do is we pull out the big ones, the wheat, the dairy, the soy, the corn, start making those changes, right? And then as we go through that, as we look at the food diary, we can see some other foods that may be triggers. And then after a few weeks of doing some gut rehab, then we can run an allergy panel, because then the thing might go from here to here, right? Because now the gut becomes a little more competent. And there's ways we can help to get the leaky gut better. So by the way, if you want to know, if you'd like to be able to get any of these products we're talking about, I'm more than happy to help you with that. So there's certain basic stuff I always talk from a gut health standpoint. One of them is a digestive enzyme. So if you click on that little link up there, you can actually order some of these products right through there. So one of them is, I like to use a digestive enzyme from a company called Designs for Health. It's called Digestive. So it's got a good breakdown of different, all the really good digestive enzymes you need, a little bit of bile to help you emulsify that fat, because a lot of people have a bile issue, as well as some TMG, which can help with the stomach acid a little bit too. And I would go with the probiotics. There's a few different brands I like to use. Clear Labs SFI is one of the main ones I use. Therabiotic Complete's a great start. But Megaspore, Microbiome Labs is another great one I like to use. And even from Orthomolecular has got a really good, their orthoimmune, what's it called again? I can't think of the name of it right now, but they make a really good one too. So you can look them up there and take a look. You can send me a message. I can do my best to give you a prescription through there with a little discount on there. A good greens drink's always good for the gut too. And if you want to help with how to close up those gap junctions, one of the products I use is one called Ion Gut Restore. That's really good for helping close those gap junctions down to help not have your gut be so leaky. There's some good detoxes we use that will also help improve gut health. One I use a lot is something from a company called Cellcore. They have a 4-phase detox program that really helps with gut and cleaning it out that I really like. So those are some basic things you can look at if you want to use that full script link right there, and we can help you out with that. And lastly, there's a couple things. So there are 2 products I like to use that can really help if someone definitely has some issues with constipation, even when you're eating cleaner. I use this thing called Super Aloe 450 from Orthomolecular. It's pretty amazing. You take one of these at night, and then by the next morning you should be going in. If after a few days it's not helping enough, you can do a second dose. And it's not addictive or anything like senna, which we want to be careful with. So senna, by the way, is a plant that can help you go to the bathroom. You see it in things like Smooth Move tea or these Senecot, whatever. Understand that senna can be helpful, and you should use it only in ever short bursts. If you use it for too long, your body can become reliant on it, and then you won't go to the bathroom without it. So we don't want to be reliant or addicted, or not want to say addicted, but stuck having to use this stuff. And then there's there's some probiotics I can use that really can, when you have bad IBS, if you're going to the bathroom too much, to help shut things down and balance it out too. So there's always a nice balance. So if you want to know more about all those products, you can drop a comment below. You could message us directly. You could email me, or anything like that. The core system is great. But I hope that was helpful. Hope that gave you some tools you can start using right away. So guys, thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for sharing this out. And if you haven't shared it out, what are you waiting for? So with that, I will say Good night and farewell. Dr. Ketone is out.